Talking about business models, why create expansions rather than a new game entirely? What is the
For Heroes 6 especially, the add-ons and expansions have been a trademark of the brand since Might and Magic 2 and especially 3. So it's things people expect. When Hero 6 was released, all the fans were saying, so when does the expansion comes up? It's like natural thing, you need an expansion, you wait for an expansion.
Is there less development time?
Less development time, and once you've got the core game covered, because the world has 9 factions, 9 races in it, and the core game was only 5, you have room for adding some new content, maybe some minor features, but not redoing an entire game. That would be not only a waste of opportunities, but also something that the fans would not understand. Come on, you do just a game, no expansion, and then you move to the next one.
Yeah.
It's not what you expect from a Heroes game. Yeah.
So how long, on average, have each expansion taken to develop?
This one was very long for complex reasons having to do with changing the developer. The original game was developed by Black Hole, an Hungarian studio. The adventure pack was developed by Limbic, a German studio. The guys are now working on Might Magic 10. And this expansion is another developer, yeah. So it was finding a developer that was knowledgeable about the Might Magic universe, good at doing a Heroes experience that is satisfying, but being available. So it took us some time to find the right, let's say, substitutes to Black Hole, and so it took a year and a half between the game and the expansion. That's way too long. Most of the time it's 9 months, less than a year at least, when between the original game and the expansion. So.
And obviously, how long would making a new game? How long would that actually take? Years.
3 years.
3 years.
Yeah. So
you definitely please your audience
exactly.
by cutting that time down. Okay. A kind of more general question, more geared towards newcomers. How do you go about making Might and Magic accessible to newcomers?
When we inherited the IP, the first step when we recreated the universe was to say, let's go for archetypes. So players who know a little bit about fantasy and are interested by this kind of setting will understand our world quickly. So for instance, I've seen some games out there with people who have pointed ears, live in the wood and are very good archers, and they call them Zwollablum, like, come on, they're elves, right? So try not to be original to the point that you are really messing things up. So we said, okay, this is high fantasy. We have elves, orcs, demons, paladins, angels, unicorns. So let's admit it. We won't be 100% original. Player expect something from the elves. Let's give it to them. Let's be original in the flavor or the little details. So for instance, our dwarves, they're very good at forging things. They live in the mountains, secluded. They like beer. They have beards, braided beards, classic. But in our world, they're related to the dragon god of fire, because the whole world was created and worship the dragon gods, and the elemental dragon gods especially. So the dwarves are related to the dragon god of fire, which makes them very good at forging things, because basically they don't fear fire that much. They could hammer molten iron with their bare hands and not be burned. When they get angry, their beard and hair will turn into flames. When they decide that they want to prove to the deity that they are the chosen ones, that jump into volcanoes, and most of them die, but some of them are reborn into big, powerful creatures called the fire giants that would be able to forge the huge dwarf constructs and armors and stuff. So that makes them different from the dwarves in Lord of the Rings or in Warcraft or in another fantasy setting. But still, players who like to play dwarves will find them dwarvish enough to be pleasing, and will understand them rapidly. Well, what they do, what is their strength or their weakness, etc. So that's how we do for the whole world. And when we write stories and settings for the game, we try to take the player by the little door. So the personal story of his characters or heroes, instead of throwing at him the whole cosmogony of the world and make it very abstract. And that's the intention. Sometimes it's very we appreciate when it's really a success. Like in some games, really you step by step you understand the specificities of the world and you understand the IP. In other games, it was not so good, so you may feel overwhelmed by the amount of information you get about the lore of Ashan. And the same goes for gameplay. We have complex mechanics for most of our games. We try to do tutorials and tooltips and work on what we call accessibility, insights and feedback and interfaces for the player to understand the game, because if you don't understand the game, it's not fun. We're not talking about complexity, but really about step by step understanding how it plays. For that, we consider, for instance, that Clash of Heroes is very good. If you try to explain the game mechanics to someone in 5 minutes, they may get confused. But if you play the 20-minute tutorial, you understand everything, and then you're hooked and you go for the whole game, and all the variations are just added complexity to the core mechanics. Same is true for Duel of Champions. Once you understand the core mechanics of the battle, the specific abilities of all the cards and how they interact with each other is the depth of the game that you learn step by step. So that's our objective for all our games. As I was saying, sometimes we give ourselves a pat on the back, and sometimes we flay ourselves with barbed wires.
Kind of a more general question as well. Do you think there's been much influence from TV programs like Game of Thrones, movies, Lord of the Rings, in terms of your user base and fans of the series? Do you think that's had an impact at all? I mean, they're very popular now. Yeah,
exactly, and that's
compared to years ago. So.
Yeah, that's what we feel. That's what that's how we discuss our audience. When we were working on the World of Ashan and the rebirth of the Might Magic brand, it was at the same time that World of Warcraft was growing, becoming huge, and that Lord of the Rings was becoming the movies that we know today. So it was also a big time for classic high fantasy. And Game of Thrones at that time were novels that were becoming popular. Now at the time of Shades of Darkness, Game of Thrones, most of the people who are interested in fantasy know about it, have seen the show. And Hero 6 was heavily inspired by it in terms of a family tragedy, complex story of political betrayal and power struggles. It would not have been the same story in Heroes 3 or 4, even if there were already some family ties and stuff like that, because it was a different period. So we try to put ourselves. Most of the people working on the Might Magic IP are fantasy fans themselves. So obviously, we were among the first to read the Game of Thrones, and we knew Tolkien before it became a movie. Yeah. So that's the idea. But now we feel that most of the people composing our audience are familiar with the same books or stories or IPs that we know also, and so without making specific reference to them, we take that into account when we work on a new story or a new setting or a new creature.
Yeah. So how hard do you think it is to kind of come up with original ideas? I mean, at the same time, you want to have an element of familiarity with the characters. Coming up with fresh kind of characters. How hard is that?
As I was saying, it's always an interesting mix. I would say 80% of our world or stories or characters or even gameplay, game design elements are classic stuff that you would find in other fantasy games or settings. Our main motto is it's useless to try to reinvent the wheel. So for instance, most of the fantasy RPGs have fireballs in them, so don't try to say a searing sphere of flames instead of just go for fireball, and don't overstress yourself. Yeah. But like for the example of the dwarf, we try to for minor things or things that seem to be detailed but become very important, the definition of the creature or in a gameplay element, we try to add something that would be unique to our world or at least a bit special. For the dwarves, for instance, but another very good example is the vampire. In our world, we have vampires. They are not the classic Dracula things or Twilight vampires either. They are basically wizards who wanted to become immortal, and they started to explore death magic, and through that they came into contact with emanation of the death goddess that we call Namtarus, that are huge spider spirits with a sacred venom that kills you instantly, dissolves everything, very potent acid, but that also destroys the spirit, not only the flesh. But they found a way to brew this venom and ingest it, at first little by little, adding it to the food or the drink, and it gave them extended life, but by killing their emotions, their humanity, by slowing down or putrefying slowly their internal organs, so heart was beating slower, that they will not feed anymore, etc. And if they took a massive amount of it and drank it almost pure, either they would die instantly, or they would die because all the internal organs would be dissolved, but suddenly be reborn as something more powerful, better, eternal, immortal, vampires. In their veins there's this sacred venom that flows, and it means that vampires in our world have to drink blood, but not because it's the only thing they can drink or eat, but because it dilutes the venom in their veins, so it prevents them from being destroyed body and spirit by the venom. So that's the mechanics, and of course they become younger, more powerful, faster. I mean, typical vampire superheroes. But that's the origin of our vampires. So it makes them really special, and players who enjoy the lore and play Necropolis and live the story, for instance, of Vayne in the standalone, discover that and say, oh, it's cool, it's a different breed of vampires.
Yeah. So you've obviously spent a lot of time and energy in kind of conceptualizing these characters that are familiar, but also you've got your own kind of spin on those popular kind of characters. How many hours would it take to complete the expansion?
So the standalone, roughly 20. It's composed of, I'm talking about the single player campaign, it's 8 maps, and an average map in Hero 6 is 3 hours, 2 to 3 hours, so yeah, roughly 20 hours to complete the standalone, plus 8 multiplayer maps to add some more playtime to the experience.
And if you could, I know you said it's quite difficult, if you could surmise the expansion in a few words perhaps, how would you do that? What would you say to someone that, I mean, to describe it to someone who's not familiar?
Someone who has never played Hero 6 before, I would say this will allow you to play 2 of the most tactical and challenging and exciting factions of the Might Magic universe, the Dark Elves and the Necromancers, to explore all the various shades of dark magic, because those 2 factions are the masters of dark magic, and to discover, if it's your first time, the addictive mechanic of one more battle, one more turn, that is at the heart of the hero's experience. It's a turn-based strategy game at heart, so you have to develop your empire, conquer the enemy cities, steal the resources, crush his armies in battles, and everything is turn-based, so you really play at your own pace, and it's more of a relaxed experience that makes you feel like a general or a tactician than a normal RDS in which there is more stress and more, let's say, reflexes plus knowledge involved.
Okay, and lastly, what is your most kind of defining moment in being creative director for this expansion? You mean in my career, or? No, your favourite kind of moment
as
creative director for the expansion.
There are 2 very, very exciting moments. It's when we start on a new project and we do the initial brainstorm session on what will be the story, what creature we will have, what would be the key gameplay element that will make it super cool. So that's really the phase that I think everybody adores in the video game industry when you're in the creative teams. And the other very exciting moment is when your game is revealed for the first time and you see people from the press or the fans or the general audience play it. And even the first playtest sessions, but when the game is not complete, it's less important. But really, when you feel okay, this was an idea, this has become something that is for real, and now people are playing it, and I see if they enjoy it or not. But hopefully that they enjoy, how they enjoy it, and it's great. So I like to be in consumer events like Gamescom or PAX, because that's what you see for 3, 4, 5 days.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much for your time, and I'm looking forward to. When is the game releasing?
2nd of May.
2nd of May. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.